TMY con HAQ Cow CC Tran Kai Kunai QSAC Su Titan Bay DY. Train that Elaine Hick MT, the Kang Chuyening Hip Chut Now. Chapter 12 The Anniversary Aftermath. The steakhouse was a haven of red velvet booths, dim lighting, and the smell of sizzling fat. For Jack, Johnny, and Chrissy, it was paradise. For Stanley, it was a place where the prices were outrageous, a word he repeated every time he looked at the menu. "I'll have the smallest steak you have," Stanley told the waiter, "and make sure it's cooked until it's dead. I don't want anything looking back at me." Helen, dressed in her most vibrant orange caftan, beamed at the roommates. "Isn't this lovely? Just like one big happy family." Jack, who was currently cutting a piece of prime rib that felt like heaven on a fork, nodded enthusiastically. "It's wonderful, Mrs. Roper. Thank you so much." "So, Jack," Helen said, leaning in, "how is school going? Any new recipes for Stanley to save us from?" Jack choked slightly on his water. "Oh, school is great. I'm working on my final project, a 5-course meal. Just don't make it French," Stanley grumbled. "My stomach is still recovering from that bacteria you mentioned." The conversation drifted to the puppy, Bernice. Helen showed off a picture of the dog wearing a small hat she had, whereupon Stanley pretended to be annoyed. But Jack noticed him slipping a piece of bread under the table when he thought nobody was looking, a clear sign that the tough landlord had been conquered by for paws and a wet nose. As the night ended and they walked back to the apartment building, the cool ocean breeze felt refreshing. The drama of the lost rent and the near eviction felt like a distant memory, replaced by the warm glow of a full stomach and the company of friends. Epilogue: Three's Company. As the door clicked shut on apartment 201, the three roommates stood in the center of their living room. The sun had long since set, and the only light came from the neon sign of the laundry across the street, casting a soft blue glow over the room. They were still broke. They were still living a lie that could crumble with one wrong word to Stanley. And they were still three very different people crammed into a space that was just a little too small. But as Jack grabbed his spatula to finish the lopsided cake, and Jana laughed at a joke Chrissy hadn't even finished telling, and they all sat down on the newly fixed couch, they realized that they had something much more valuable than $300. They had each other. They had a home where laughter was the most common sound, and where even a Jimmy cake tasted like a victory. And in the golden, chaotic heart of Santa Monica in the 1970s, that was more than enough. The end. Three's Company, The Santa Monica Chronicles. Prologue: A lovable space. The sun over Santa Monica didn't just shine, it leaned in, heavy and golden, smelling of salt air and cheap suntan oil. On Hauser Street, the apartment building owned by Stanley and Helen Roper stood as a monument to 1970s architecture: beige stucco, iron railings, and the constant, rhythmic sound of the Pacific Ocean crashing a few blocks away. Inside apartment 201, the air was usually filled with the scent of Jack Tripper's experimental cooking, the fragrance of Jana Wood's freshly cut flowers, and the occasional, inexplicable sound of Chrissy snow dropping something heavy. Their arrangement was a delicate dance of deception. To the world, they were just three roommates sharing the rent. To Stanley Roper, their landlord, a man whose worldview was stuck somewhere between the Great Depression and the Korean War, Jack Tripper was a safe gay man. It was the only way Stanley would allow a red-blooded male to live with two beautiful women. Jack Tripper, however, was as red-blooded as they came. He was a culinary student with the agility of a gymnast and the luck of a man who accidentally steps on every banana peel in a 10-mile radius. This is the story of how the deception, a lost puppy, a missing rent envelope, and a very aggressive niece turned their lives into a beautiful, chaotic ball of laughter. Chapter 1, The Niece and the $50 Lie. The morning began with the rhythmic snip-snap of Helen Roper's nail file. She sat on the floral-patterned sofa in the Ropers' downstairs apartment, her eyes fixed on the hallway. "Be quiet, Helen," Stanley hissed, pacing the room in his bathrobe, which looked like it had been salvaged from a defunct hotel in 1954. "You're gonna wake Karen." Helen didn't stop. "Filing my nails is gonna wake up your niece." "It's not the filing, Stanley, it's the breaking. Every time you break a nail, you swear loud enough to wake the dead." Stanley ignored her, peering toward the guest room where his niece, Karen, was sleeping off her jet lag from New York. "She's adjusted to a new time zone, Helen. I promised my brother I'd take care of her." "You're not taking care of her, Stanley. You're her jailer," Helen retorted, finally putting the file down. "The girl is young. She should be out meeting people her own age, not walking to the end of the pier to hear your war stories for the 15th time. It's a dangerous city," Stanley grumbled, "full of weirdos and perverts." Helen smirked. "I wasn't talking about your friends, Stanley." Stanley's mind began to work. You wanted Karen out of the house for a night, but only if she was safe. And then, like a lightning bolt hitting a weather vane, he thought of apartment 201. He thought of Jack Tripper. Upstairs, the lovable space was in its usual state of morning bustle. Jana was arranging a bouquet of daisies, her brow furrowed in concentration. Chrissy was in the kitchen, staring intently at a birthday cake. "Hey, I got Jeanette's cake," Jack announced, bursting through the door with a cardboard box. "Is it a surprise?" Chrissy whispered loudly. "It's half price," Jack said, opening the box. The guy who ordered it never picked it up. It says "Happy Birthday, Jimmy," but a little scraping, and it'll say "Happy Birthday, Jay," which is basically Jana if you're illiterate. Jana walked in, wiping her hands. "I can hear you, Jack, and I know it's my birthday." "The surprise is ruined," Chrissy wailed, though she was the one who had been dropping hints for 3 days. Before Jack could defend his discount cake strategy,